Yeah, guys, no AV, so no projector stuff. So if you don't get what I'm saying and can't hear very well, you're going to get pretty much zero. So if there's too much noise, please move up and take some seats a little closer. I found out I was giving this talk rather late, and slides at the last minute are a good way to torture yourself and the audience. I did try to get our friend Miguel out there to do my presentation in henna on my forearms, but we didn't get very far. We got to like one of my favorite quotes, and that's about it. Last year at BIL, I spoke about health-related stuff, this kind of intracellular cleansing process called autophagy. So a lot of folks thought that maybe I would give a health talk again today. Sort of, but I want to talk more about the health of the mind. And I'm going to start off by asking, who here has been mean before? Have any of you been mean? There's some honest people. I mean like nasty mean, right? Like you were good at it. You were mean. And what's weird is that quite often we're mean to the people we love, even more so, which is pretty paradoxical. And you know, love can really bring out the crazy, right? And it's pretty obvious in the common parlance that we're not even sure why we do this. We've got all these phrases that kind of demonstrate we don't really know what's going on. Like, you know, I'm real sorry, I don't know what happened to me back there, or oh, he just really pushed my buttons. You know, like what buttons? You ever ask yourself that? Like what buttons? But they seem like they're there. Or, you know, I didn't mean to hurt you, and I won't do that again. But hell if you don't do that again, right? Like it happens. It happens again and again. So I'm a guy who has the luxury these days of sort of following my curiosity wherever it goes. And I've decided at times that I've been in love with somebody who it was best not to continually wound and offend and harm, that the relationship was worth putting effort into. And so I went looking for answers. What's happening when an otherwise decent person, like I'm sure you all are, drop into this state where you become sort of a specialized pain-dealing machine, right, to people you love? What's going on there? I'm not going to try to dazzle you with neuroscience, because I would just be one Wikipedia page ahead of you, and you probably see through that with this audience. But I do have a background in computer science, and we'll say, just for a simple analogy here, that your mind is like a massive parallel processing computer, okay? Or whole computing system, memory, all that stuff. And just like a computer, though, not all of it is active all the time. And you know that, and we try to augment that. We try to get good sleep and coffee and this and that. Not all of that massively powerful brain of yours is running all the time. And sometimes, very little of it is running. Sometimes things happen that trigger you, and you go from being the latest massively parallel 8-core whatever processor, you go down to being the 8088, right? You just drop down. And this slide, if I had one, was going to be a picture of these two cool processors, you know, but one of them is obviously less advanced. It can't think as quickly, it can't access as much information, and that happens to us as well. Now, what gets lost when you drop into 8088 mode? What gets lost here? One thing that gets lost, and if you maybe can reflect on a time when you've been really letting somebody have it in a way that you regretted later, one thing that gets lost is almost any concept of the future. So in that moment of really letting loose on somebody and really dealing some pain, you're actually not thinking to yourself, I wonder what this is going to do this weekend when we go on vacation. I wonder how this is going to affect the relationship into the future. I wonder if I'm going to do such a good job dealing this pain right now that this person is going to carry a wound around inside of them for many years to come. You're just not thinking that way when you're in 8088 mode. You're not able to access the future. You're not even present in the sense that, you know, we think of in a nice Zen kind of way. You have an immediate need to get something painful off your chest, and you try to stick that into somebody else. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters in that moment. The other thing that gets lost when you drop into 8088 mode into basic processor mode. The other thing that gets lost is the conception and the recognition of the other person as a real person. And maybe some of you have, after one of these arguments, gone back to the person and said, I know it was all directed at you, but it's like you almost weren't even there. I was kind of like in my own head with this pain, right? Like I didn't see you as the beautiful person I'm in love with now. Like you weren't even there like that. It's hard for them to buy it, because they sure as hell felt like they were there. You were staring right at them. Now that experience probably resonates with a lot of people here. That's how I kind of snap when I snap. Other people snap in a sort of opposite way. Instead of forgetting about you as a real person, they forget about themselves. And they will do whatever it takes. They become the punching bag. They don't stand up for themselves. And these sort of people can oftentimes find each other and kind of create what we call a codependent relationship. It's a nice feedback loop. It works pretty well in a very unproductive way, but it can last a long time in a very ugly way. And those sort of folks deal more with enmeshment, is kind of the psychological term there. Now, that's just a brief portrait of what I would call low consciousness. I think the title I settled on right downstairs a few minutes ago was Mind, Tech, and the Elevation of Consciousness. What I've just described, the high computing power of your normal mind going to a very low state, is a low state of consciousness. What about a high state of consciousness? One of my favorite examples is Gandhi. I've spent a lot of time studying his life. I know he wasn't perfect. I know where he messed up. But Gandhi had some peculiar powers, and he did stuff that a lot of us wouldn't do. When a war broke out in South Africa, he wanted to be a good British citizen, but he also didn't want to fight wars. And so he started a volunteer medical corps. And he risked his life, and he went out there and tried to save people on the battlefield. On top of it, when he tried to do this at first, the British Army said, we don't want you, because we actually don't want to sully the name and the image of the British Army with these sort of brown-skinned folks. Now, how many of you would have said, I'm definitely going to get out there and save your ass? Probably none of us, right? But he did it anyway. Gandhi pleaded and convinced them. He was a capable field sort of medic to drag, dying people off the field. I wouldn't have done that. I don't have that kind of high consciousness like Gandhi had. When Gandhi was debating with political opponents, when he was sitting across from them at the debate table, these could be people who were trying to literally enslave his people. And he could really valiantly sort of fight and argue against this person. But what his opponents said, what really threw them, is that they could tell that in this argument, in this debate, in this war of wills, Gandhi really loved them. Like, he loved his opponent, and his opponents felt it. Gandhi probably loved them more in that debate table than this person's friends and family and buddies. Like, it really just threw his opponents. And that's high consciousness. That's not the kind of stuff you can fake. That's not a book you can read on negotiating tactics. Gandhi actually loved strangers and people he just met pretty much as his own children. Really high consciousness. And this is where you get, in that high consciousness, this sort of third-way choice that Gandhi and others talked about, and Martin Luther King talked about, and spent a lot of time studying. You're neither violently aggressive, nor are you passive. You find this third way of getting to your objective, but it takes a lot of high consciousness. I think this notion of high and low consciousness actually explains a lot of the myths in history and stories about gods and demons who sort of walk the earth in human form. I know that at times I've been in a state of such low consciousness that it seemed I was imbued with some almost demonic power, like I was cruel. And at other times, I have gone from my average sort of level of consciousness to just super high consciousness and really been able to help somebody out, or help heal somebody, or help show them the way. And I think it's like that for all of us. I think that's the actual common human experience. We've all had those highs. We've all had those lows. So here in my 33rd year of life, reflecting on such perplexing questions as, like, what is good and stuff like that, I've come up with a new definition for myself that works. And that is anything that elevates the consciousness. That's what's good. If you start to run with that, you find it actually works pretty well. So I've been looking for ways to elevate consciousness, plain and simple. I'm a bit of a biohacker, and so I've like done the dual end-back training game and all that, and actual gains in intelligence and working memory I guarantee, but I didn't find that it led to any heightened consciousness. I've been taking creatine as a supplement. It definitely increases the brain, the energetics of the brain, but I am worried that that energy can be just as well wielded for harm as it can for high consciousness. Breath work is very good. Practice that. The M-wave, the heart math stuff is pretty good. You can see a nice smooth graph when your breathing is going well of your heart rates. And when you're in a fight or flight kind of mode, this jaggedy sort of plane. But it's not good enough, because I can tell you that I have been holding my M-wave, watching the green seal of approval of the LED, while simultaneously letting in to my girlfriend. There's a biohacker for you. I'm like watching the green light and really handing it to somebody. So it's not good enough to totally gauge high consciousness. I had to go looking for more answers on just what are the major barriers to consciousness. And how am I doing on time? Because I have very little concept of how much time. Oh my God, very little concept. It turns out that in all branches of psychology, for the most part, they've all concluded that there's some kind of weird phenomena. Some call it complexes, some call it dissociated parts, others call it exiles and orphans and all kinds of things. But your mind is really a network of intelligences. It's not just this onion-like thing. It's this network of nodes. And the personality that you have that arises from all that is sort of a negotiation between all those parts, because they've only got one body, and they got to figure out how to get you to do what they want. And it turns out that some of those parts become isolated, they become fragmented, they happen during traumatic events that don't necessarily mean rape and murder, but can include those. They happen during times when needs are in process, like when we're young. I had a trauma that involved a moment in second grade when I realized something cool about the world. I was learning a lesson, and I was a little too loud because I thought it was neat. My whole world was shaping up here, and I got yelled at by the teacher. That was a trauma. It didn't have to involve something really heinous. It's not, real traumas in life don't make good Hollywood movies. But we're all walking around with dozens of these things rolling around in the bottom of our minds. And now to the mind tech part, in the 2 minutes I have left. There are neat mind technologies out there, but I found that they don't exist in the tech community. They exist mostly in the world of psychologists and therapists and highly untechnical people, and that is the major barrier to innovation in the levels of consciousness. I've gotten to practice techniques for reintegrating these traumatic, dissociated parts of the mind back into the fold. And I would argue that that is the actual only coherent definition of integrity we have. How integrated are the parts of your mind? How well do they actually work together? So one technology is called EMDR. Some of you might have messed around with that. I highly recommend it as a mind technology. Others have had luck with something called IFS. It's kind of the same gig. I got to talk to a woman in Kashmir who does therapy work with seriously traumatized people there, and I thought I was so smart, and I said to her, "What's your favorite? Is it EMDR or IFS?" And she looked at me and said, "I use 30 different modalities depending on the trauma and whatever works best." 30. So here I am thinking I'm on the cutting edge, and I don't know crap about this field. There are people sitting on an incredible treasure trove of psychological technology, and they don't hang out with us. Right now, unfortunately, the greatest increases to our level of consciousness don't involve electronics and software. They don't play MP3s. They don't have a touch screen. And sometimes in this community, we can get a little prejudiced against that. If it doesn't need to be recharged or plugged in, is it really technology? This stuff is technology. And I would suggest that you go, if you know you've dropped into low consciousness repeatedly at times, that you go get some therapy, hang out with these folks. Not just because it'll be one of the best things you can do for yourself and your relationship, but you also we need you to learn their kung fu. We need you to bring it back. We need you to learn how to market it, how to package it, how to meld it with real technology that we're more familiar with. The other thing you can do is to make sure that you're working for a company that elevates the consciousness of humanity. And I don't mean you have to go work at a yoga studio. There are all kinds of other ways. The reason I'm so into health, the reason I give talks on health and optimal diet just as much, is because the mind lives in the brain and the brain lives in the body. So we got to get the body straight. So if you're working on health companies or for a health company that goes to root causes of our health, then you are helping to elevate consciousness. A lot of folks out there, this may sound a little woo-woo, everything I've said, but a lot of folks are getting it, like Elon Musk. When somebody asked him recently why he was doing the whole interplanetary SpaceX thing, he said, so that the light of consciousness will not be extinguished. See, he's not betting on us not blowing this planet apart with atomic weaponry or poisoning the crap out of it, so that the light of consciousness will not be extinguished. If you're working on space stuff, you're going to help us extend consciousness off of this one rock that we're not doing a great job with. I should probably end it there because I am out of time right now. Thanks, everybody.